Let me ask you this, because we know that the virtual education experience works for some students, for some it doesn't. And we know the same may apply to students with special, or as you said, exceptional needs. When does it work and when doesn't it?
Yeah, great question. So I am going to speak in broad terms because
Yes.
I do believe it can work for really all students. Again, if all people are committed and all parties are devoted to what may be extensive or extra work to drive success. But we'll talk about students that we have seen transition exceptionally well from the brick and mortar environment.
Yeah.
And those would be students that had environmental challenges. So think in the brick and mortar environment, it could be something as simple as the fluorescent lights above the student. And that was very distracting to a student with autism. The changing classes, the hallway noise, the challenges in navigating stairs at a brick and mortar building. If we can remove those distractions by bringing the student to the home environment, some of what made them actually qualify for special education services are no longer those barriers that we see today in the home environment.
Interesting.
Yeah. Even simple things, students that perhaps have ADHD, some challenges, and need to play with the fidget toys that are around them, need to move, need to walk while learning. We can do that in the home environment because they're not a distraction to their instructor or their peers. So we see great success when we are able to meet the students where they are with what they need and be able to apply that in the online environment.
You know, Jenny, I'm struck by something you said earlier. You said that you think that any child could work in the virtual education environment if all parties are committed. And I know parents are listening. What exactly does that mean? I know you alluded to it, but we know, for instance, like in the general ed, for lack of a better description, population, some kids take to the virtual education experience than others because they may be self-starters or different levels of motivation. Some, need that visual first-hand classroom experience. But I'm struck by the fact that you said you think it could work for every child if everyone is committed, which really almost puts the onus on the parents, stakeholders, and all of that. Talk more about that.
Sure. I mean, I think the heaviest weight is on those that are in the educational system. So that would be your administration, your general education teachers, your special education teachers, and depending on the student's needs, the varying support staff who come in. And as the special education director and across a network of large schools, I have to be committed to ensure, and does any other special education director, that we layer on what that student needs for success. And that could be mighty. That could be one-on-one instruction by teachers, someone making sure that student gets a text in the morning to say, it's 9 o'clock, 5 minutes to log in. It's 10:10, 5 minutes to log in, to get that motivated or unmotivated student to log in. That could be sending significant forms of assistive technology to make sure that technology that's in front of the student works for them and meets them where they are. We have students with severe, profound physical disabilities that we are sending switches and adaptive tools so their computers may work for them. They may be using just a mouth piece to monitor or move their computer screen. So it's really the commitment from all parties to be willing to do that, to spend the extra time. And there is definitely a piece to the parents choosing to bring this child and school their student in the home environment. So there's a commitment from the parent on what that looks like and making sure that resources that we send and have in place are accepted by the parent and the student.
So I guess that I know the answer to your question, but I have to ask, can students with special or exceptional needs get the same type of comprehensive services online as they can get in person?
Yes, yes. I will say yes with a few exceptions. So I began my career as a speech and language pathologist many many years ago.
Yeah.
And there is a time in certain modalities where there is a face-to-face need.
Yeah.
So I always say about 95% of the time. But if you think about staying in my original lane of being a speech and language pathologist, there may be a time that we need to put a tongue depressor on a student's tongue to, make sure they know how to form sounds. So there is still some requirements from face-to-face support, depending on the unique needs of each individual student.
So let me ask you along those lines a couple of other examples. What about this idea of socialization? Talk a little bit about that in the online context.
Sure. I think the easiest way to talk about socialization for students with special needs or exceptional needs is to talk about what they do naturally in their outside of school environment. You're going to see a lot of students online. They're using gamification tools
Yes.
to interact with their friends. What we can do in our environment is make that educational gamification tools to interact with their peers. So just how many students are going home and on their PlayStations or whatever their tools may be to interact with their peers, texting, etc., we can replicate those in a safe modality to ensure that students have appropriate socialization, monitored appropriate socialization, and have the opportunity to interact with their peers as they would outside of a traditional school setting anyways.
Thanks for listening to What I Want to Know. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you can explore other episodes and dive into our discussions on the future of education. And write a review of the show. I also encourage you to join the conversation and let me know what you want to know using hashtag WIWTK on social media. That's hashtag WIWTK. For more information on Stride and online education, visit stridelearning.com. I'm your host, Kevin P. Chavous. Thank you for joining What I Want to Know.